What if Mega PINSIR was in Gen 1 OU? Hello everybody, and welcome to the final video I will be posting for 2023. And for this video, I'm posting the Pokemon that I've wanted to do for a long time. I have made so many videos where I was like, yeah, I'll probably do Mega PINSIR later this week, or I'll do Mega PINSIR later today or tomorrow, and I never got around to it. But now, it's finally here, and I am super excited, because, honestly, out of all the videos I do, I think that taking a regular Gen 1 Pokemon, but giving its Mega, might be my favorite one of them. Because, I don't know, just the way I see it, I just find it very interesting when you take a Pokemon that's already in, like Gen 1, it's struggling, but then you just give it some, new base stats, and it's interesting to see just how much better it does. It was interesting when Mega Aerodactyl did it, because I felt like giving Mega Aerodactyl, a huge buff to its, attack and speed, as well as a minor buff to its special. I feel like that helped it out a decent bit, even though we didn't give it any other new moves. And I feel like Mega PINSIR would be even better when it comes to that. It also gets a new typing too, which, that's nothing to sneeze at, especially since it gives it an immunity. Although, sadly, it does kind of get rid of, the bugs one interesting niche when it comes to its typing in Gen 1. Because a pure bug, or, I said that weirdly, but a pure bug is actually pretty good defensively in Gen 1, as it gives you a pretty good resistance to ground. Now, would you rather have a ground immunity? Obviously. But you're also getting an electric and ice weakness now too. And now you're quad weak to rock slide. Which is sad, you definitely don't want that. But it's hard to really deny that, even with those weaknesses, having an earthquake immunity definitely means that it's easier to switch PINSIR in. Even though it has a very impressive 120 defense, it's still not the bulkiest thing around, so you don't really want it getting too much chip damage, especially since it has no way of recovery. But way more importantly, just having an immunity, having an easier time switching in, means it's a lot easier to set up. Because holy crap, this thing has 155 attack, and it has Sword Stance. Easily the strongest Pokemon physically in Gen 1 OU. There's not even anything that comes even remotely close. And that speed's also just really good. Admittedly, I always thought that Mega PINSIR would be faster, just because I just have flashbacks of using it in Gen 6 OU, and I remember it just outspeeding everything. So I guess I was wrong about that, or misremembered. Or maybe it's just because it spammed Quick Attack so much that it just felt like it was the fastest thing ever. But even then, 105 base speed is nothing to sneeze at. It outspeeds a lot of really, dangerous threats, such as Jinx and Zapdos. And both of those are very relevant, since they're literally an electric and ice type. They would seriously threaten PINSIR if they can attack it. And that's another reason why having just a good speed stat is really good, or no, just great for PINSIR. Because not only does it outspeed key threats that normally wouldn't, because as you see here, regular PINSIR is only 85 base speed, and 125 attack is still pretty good, but it's not 155. But along with just being fast and outspeeding threats, it also gives you a really good crit rate. I think over 20%. So when you have an attack stat this big, that's obviously a big deal. But also, one of regular PINSIR's most interesting traits, Bind. If I remember correctly, this is the move you get from... Isn't it Brock? I think Brock gives you this after you defeat the first gym. It's a pivot move. And I'm pretty sure this now makes PINSIR the fastest pivoter in the game. The only other one I can think about that's pretty fast is well, regular Pinsir and Victory Bell / Cloister at base 70 speed. I can't think of anything faster that also has a trapping move. If there is, let me know in the comments. But yeah, this is a big deal. And like I said before, Pinsir also has Sword Stance, which surprisingly isn't mandatory. But that's just because of how high your attack is, as well as just your chance of critting. If you really wanted to, you could just get rid of that entirely and have different attacking options. Because if you see here, it does have a lot of pretty good moves. And you definitely suffer from 4 move swap syndrome. You have Slash, which is always just a high critical hit ratio, which means you just hit all the time with a crit. And it's basically 140, base power, so it's just a slightly weaker Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam itself is also very good. Not only does it hit a little bit more, but also, if the Hyper Beam does crit, unless it's like Gengar or Rhydon exactly, whatever you're facing against is probably screwed. Obviously, Body Slam is just a good, consistent move that has a chance to paralyze, which could be good against threats like Alakazam or Starmie. And Submission is also actually good. I know Submission has a really bad reputation of just being very bad, mostly because it is, but it's still well, there aren't really any decent Pokemon that really use it. Like, even Machamp doesn't really use it. It probably would rather use Low Kick, and Machamp is even good. But with Pinsir, with how fast it is, and with Sword Stance, and a good crit hit ratio, you can definitely argue Pinsir using it. And outside of some Mewtwo's using it, just for the purposes of just, PP stalling, I think Mega Pinsir would be the best user of the move. But you guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. But also, obviously, as you see from these moves, it only has normal and fighting moves. It has absolutely no way of hitting Gengar, and if we're being honest, can't really hurt Rhydon either. It has Submission, but you need a Sword Stance in order to have that threaten to kill Rhydon. And even then, it's still 80 accuracy, so, you can try to go for it if you want, buddy, but you probably shouldn't. Which, having these moves and not being able to hit Rhydon and a Gengar, it's definitely a big problem. But with Seismic Toss, you can technically hit Gengar. But I'm gonna argue that you don't really need to do that. Because 1, it has Bind. Does it hurt Gengar? No. But it still traps it and makes Gengar unable to move. Which means that, technically, you could still pivot around Gengar. They take out Gengar, you trap it, and then you switch into your Alakazam or Rhydon, or just anything. Which, I would argue that alone is good enough. But also, you gotta be real for a second. With these moves, and with these stats and typing, you already know what your strengths and weaknesses are. Pinsir has so many amazing moves, and even if you cross Seismic Toss out, it wants to use Bind, Hyper Beam, Slash, Sword Stance, Submission, but it can't. And having Seismic Toss is just a really, really bad move. You're literally only using it for maybe consistent damage, but more realistically, just so you can hit Gengar exactly. And you're now a Flying type. You're weak to Thunderbolt. Gengars always run Thunderbolt, so you're not even winning the 1v1. So instead of running Seismic Toss, I think Pinsir players just need to accept the fact that you will never be able to hit Gengar, and just try to build your team around taking out Gengar. If that, because Gengar usually goes out really quickly. So you should just save the Pinsir until the Gengar is dead. Preferably when the Rhydon's dead too. But if the Rhydon's taking a while to chip, potentially Submission could be enough to just finish it off. So overall, Pinsir definitely has a, I would say like a pretty major upgrade. And I do think a decent chance of Mega Pinsir being an OU. I don't know for sure, because it's still a very, risky Pokemon, just with that unfortunately bad defensive typing, as well as the fact that there's just a lot of things in Gen 1 that can kill it. But at the same time, this is probably one of the most dangerous wave cleaners in the game. Even without Sword Stance, it can just clean up a lot of stuff. And if you give it a chance to use Sword Stance, it is suddenly the most dangerous Pokemon in the game. And very few things can actually take it on 1v1 at that point. But I think that's enough rambling on. Let's go into the replays, shall we? Always starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. And unfortunately, like, Wizard is I'd imagine a 2-hit KO. Technically with range, it could be a 3-hit KO. So maybe going for submission wasn't the right play there. But at 51 HP or percent remaining, I imagine it would have just killed anyways. But as you see here, submission was actually just a 2-hit KO as well. Which is a pretty big deal. Like, how many things in the game can actually just 2-shot Tauros? Outside of Tauros' Hyper Beam exactly. There's probably a few answers, but with how fast PINSIR is, and with its really great crit rate, which I'm pretty sure is over 20%, if I remember correctly, it's a big deal. And it means that PINSIR always beats Tauros 1v1. I'd be willing to bet that even a Sword Stance and a Hyper Beam also does just as much. But someone can let me know in the comments. And next off we have Snorlax. And it usually always depends on which Snorlax variant you're using. Reflect Wax is obviously really annoying. Amnesia Wax can just kill you with Ice Beam. However, if it's just a physical attacking Snorlax set, PINSIR does significantly better. The 120 defense is really great. Not to mention you're immune to Earthquake. So depending on the Snorlax set, I do think that it's potentially one of the mons that PINSIR can actually just full one set up against. It's still risky because Body Slam can still paralyze and self-destruct, and Hyper Beam just hit really hard. But I think, like, maybe I'm just being optimistic, but I can see that being pretty good. Especially if the Snorlax is chipped, because then, like, your opponent just has to decide, are they going to keep trying to attack, are they going to rest, switch out, or are they going to risk just PINSIR getting a Sword Stance up? And by the way, when Mega PINSIR only gets one Sword Stance up, it's already at the 800s in attack. So, yeah, that's just, like, insane. It's actually just, like, Mega, or not Mega, it's Gen 2 Marowak levels of power, which I think that's really cool. And for Chansey, you have a really good matchup against it. It's very weak physically, and also you have Submission, you have Hyper Beam, you can trap it with Bind. Granted, you should definitely try to go for Bind a little bit more, just to put it in a damage range. But since you're faster, using a trapping move to put it in a damage range is really easy. And a single, Sword Stance means you can just destroy it with Hyper Beam. Which, good for PINSIR. Good for him. And then Alakazam, it's fast, it can paralyze you. At the same time, you can really damage it with both Slash and Hyper Beam. I was just curious for this replay to see if, like, Hyper Beam had a chance to OHKO. It obviously doesn't, but it still does a huge amount of damage anyways. But even though Alakazam is very frail physically, it can still, again, paralyze you, crit with Psychic, get a special drop. And even though all Alakazams would rather use Seismic Toss as just another good attacking option, I will not be surprised if the inclusion of PINSIR has some Alakazam players, switch Seismic Toss to Reflect. Which some people do that anyways, but I don't think it's very good in my opinion. And then with Cloyster, just a really bad matchup all around, in all honesty. If you have a Sword Stance up, it does a little bit better, but even then, Cloyster's so strong physically, and I don't think Submission is strong enough to where it can OHKO Cloyster with a Sword Stance, which means you just take Recoil, and then it finishes you off with Blizzard. And to be honest, it's probably going to finish you off with Blizzard anyway. Which, yeah, that sucks. But I don't think anyone's very surprised, though. And then with Executor, it's... Again, you can, like, trap it with pivoting and whatnot, but Executor is really tanky. And even though you're a bug type, you don't actually have any bug type moves. So, for the most part, you kind of have to get lucky. Either with getting a good crit, or just pivoting it until it gets into a good damage range. But it's probably not. Which means Executor is probably going to put you to sleep, paralyze you, and then Psychic is a 3-hit KO. So, kind of embarrassing that the bug type, the Mega Pinsir of all things, loses very badly to the grass type, but it's just how it is sometimes. Sometimes in Gen 1 you just have very bad move pools. And here's the one we talked about, Gengar. Again, you can trap it with Bind, it's unable to move, but that's the only thing you can really do. Because Seismic Toss is not going to beat a Pokemon that 2-shots you with Thunderbolt. Especially when that Pokemon is already faster than you, and has an even better crit rate. But the crit mattered though, definitely. And then Jolteon is basically the same thing. It's faster than you, has super effective Thunderbolt. So unless you like, get lucky and get it paralyzed, it's just always going to beat you in the 1v1. And then with, what's it called, Jinx. It's the same situation as Chansey, but a lot easier. It's very weak physically, so it's very easy just to use Bind, put it in the damage range, and just finish it off with Hyper Beam. But even if, like, the opponent switches their Jinx out, because they don't want to face a Pinsir, obviously, Bind still just makes it to where you can pivot in anything you want. So overall, even though Jinx is a great Pokemon, and one that is very dangerous to you, because you're faster, it means that you pretty much have a great matchup against it, since there's not going to be many situations where it can really threaten you. The only way you can is if Pinsir is like paralyzed or something. And if it's paralyzed, that means you can't even put it to sleep. So just, good for Pinsir. Good for him. And then with Rhydon, you can pivot it. You could just trap it and try to switch into something else. That's like the only real thing you can do. If you're gutsy, you can try to go for Sword Stance once it's in like range of that, with Sword Stance boosted submission. But you're probably not gonna get that lucky, so just don't even try it. And I already did another calc too. Pretty sure Rock Slide does always just OHKO at full HP. So just an unwinnable matchup for Pinsir. But not one that I don't think surprises anyone. This one did surprise me though. Because obviously T-Wave is annoying, but Pinsir, it fights physically. And while Slowbro has a lot of, physical defense, Sword Stance on Pinsir is just so freaking powerful to where it can very easily just threaten Slowbro very quickly. Which means Slowbro can't afford to waste turns setting up all of its special. Which means Pinsir actually can just finish it off, as you saw there. And even though the Pinsir is paralyzed, unless it's like the opponent takes a Rhydon exactly, this Pinsir is still a very, very dangerous threat. So I really didn't see that coming, but I think it's pretty cool. And against Starmie, it's another Pokemon that can paralyze you, but I'm not even sure if it would do that, like, realistically. Either way though, Starmie, it 2-hit KOs with Blizzard, but at the same time, Hyper Beam and Slash 2-hit KO you as well. So if the Starmie is paralyzed, you have a really good chance of actually, like, finishing it off. And you probably just win the 1v1, in all honesty. So could go either way. I didn't expect that either, but I guess it makes sense if you really think about it. And last but not least, Pinsir versus Zapdos. You're faster than Zapdos, which is really good. However, it's still Bind. It's still not very accurate. So you better hope you get pretty lucky with it. Otherwise, Zapdos is going to do a lot of damage to you. But it's a good thing that its other moves like Body Slam, Hyper Beam, and Slash so do a lot of damage as well. But yeah, you wish your trapping move was more accurate. But still, like a lot of people and a lot of Pokemon just really struggle to face Zapdos in general. So the fact that Pinsir a flying type with no super effective coverage can do a decently well job facing it, I think that's pretty impressive. So here we have the final tier list of 2023, and it's a lot better than I thought I was going to do. I wasn't sure how Mega PINSIR would do when I started this. I really felt like, okay, it's a lot faster now, but I probably won't have too many opportunities to use sword stance, and a lot of things could just hit it super effectively. But I feel like this tier list here is pretty respectable. I think it would do decently well. Enough for OU? I don't know, but I do think it would definitely have a good niche in OU. By far the best sword stance user. And if it doesn't end up in OU, it would definitely be amazing and underused, in my opinion. What do you think? Do you think Mega PINSIR would be OU material? Do you think it would struggle? And do you think... what's a third point I can use? I don't know, do you think we'll ever find a good bug type to put in Gen 1 OU ever again? I know there's like Genesect, but I feel like using Genesect is cheating. But I just want to say this now. Thank you all for just a wonderful year. I started this year with 70 subscribers, and I had the goal of making it to 200 by the end of the year. But instead, I'm currently at 672, so... You guys are crazy. I do not know why these dumb videos of just me edit, or just me like rambling, like do so well. But they are, and it makes me so happy. So just thank all of you for just being here. I have a lot of plans for 2024. A lot of other videos I want to do. A lot of them what if videos. Some of them are just completely original videos. I'm definitely thinking about doing more Yu-Gi-Oh videos. And also Generation Jumble. I'm going to be restarting that very soon. So, if you would like to play Gen 1 OU, but it has new Pokemon, such as like Smeargle, or Sceptile, or Great Tusk, etc., be sure to join. I'll be hosting the first tournament for that soon. I'll probably... I don't know when I'm going to announce it. It's definitely going to happen in very early January. But I'm going to give people time to sign up, so don't worry. But I think that's everything. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.